Welcome to this very special program focusing on the sugar industry, debunking the myths, discussing many of the issues facing the industry, understanding those issues, and discussing the Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union's recommendations to address those very issues. There continues to be a deafening silence on the state of the sugar industry. We keep seeing some very harsh statements here and there as to what is going on. We are going to sit today to sort of distinguish what are the facts and what are the myths. Earlier this year I was in Parliament, and there the Minister of Agriculture presented a state paper on the sugar industry, and there are lots of things about diversification and the government trying to sort of, I'm going to use a very loose word, rid itself of the sugar industry. What exactly are the facts? The high cost of production is something that the government says that it cannot continue to factor. What are the facts when it comes to that?
Okay, we have to recognize that the high cost of production must be related to the production itself. You have fixed costs in the sugar industry, which is very high, 70% fixed cost. So if your production is way behind, your cost of production will be high, because your production is lower than it ought to be. When you take your resources there, your factories, your mechanical fleet, your workers, the people, when you take everything into account and you're not producing as much as you should in keeping with your resources, and you have a fixed cost, whether you produce a low amount of sugar or a high amount of sugar, those costs are fixed. So it is related. Now what has been happening, that the sugar production had been falling and had been declining miserably over the years. And that accounts and that explains why your production is so high. That GAWU keep harping on this, but without apportioning where the fault lies. It has to do with the management of the industry. The fault lies with the management of the industry, and we cannot ignore this question. To blame strikes, to blame workers, to blame the union, to blame the weather, whether it's El Nino or La Nina, and bringing all these factors and all these issues into the question of the cost of production is not fair. Not fair. Over the years we have seen this, and now it's becoming more and more prominent, these kind of excuses. So we have to put things in perspective. The two are related, and we need to put the production right. And that is what we keep talking about.
How can they address what they're claiming is the high cost of production at this time?
All right, let me come back on that. Sure. Let us take 2015. The production went to 231 from what it was the previous year. It significantly increased. In fact, it went up higher than what was envisaged as the production for the year. Then come last year, it was 183. This year, at the beginning of this year, the GAWU announced it will produce 194,000 tons of sugar. Then we have a new production schedule that we received earlier this month, which speaks to the production of 174. So you're talking about a fall of production of 25%. Just what is the reason for this, we don't know. In fact, I remember the IMC chief representative pointed out to the high production or the better production in 2015 that there is an end to political interference in the sugar industry. And there was a lot of enthusiasm around the place, there's a lot of saying that, look, we have done well. The sugar industry is now moving to be able to perform better. So it has to do with the management of the industry, that the production has been falling, and this year, as I said, 25% lower than the two crops that they produced in 2015 that they inherited from 2014 and previous to that, because what you reap this year is what you put in last year.
Mr. Tamron, do you want to comment on what the company has been talking about, its billions of dollars in losses? There are a clear number of issues that obviously has not been addressed over the years. We've had a big commission of inquiry, and we thought that there would have been some solid answers. There hasn't been many solid answers.
Well, what I can say is that since we had that meeting on the 31st of December 2016, and the government came out with this so-called state paper, and the union in response gave them some proposals. Now, in those proposals, there were other things that we suggested that they should do, including refined sugar, etc., to offset some of the costs or to increase the financial status of the industry. Now, what I want to focus here is that when we're talking about production, high production means a lesser cost of producing. Lower production is a higher cost of producing. Now, some of the reasons that we find that is happening with regards to that is that the practices, the crop husbandry practices by the company, for example, we had what we call a flood follow. Flood follow in the terms of you abandon these fields for 6 months and get it underwater. And that will enhance the fertility. When you enhance the fertility, you find that you'll be able to get more sugar from the cane. GAWU clearly has abandoned these practices. And so this is now related to production, which also related to the cost. As the company said earlier, the higher the production, the lesser the cost. Now, also what you find happening is that years ago we had something called a mechanical tillage inspection, meaning that when you prepare these fields for planting, they will have a team of people that will go and inspect the kind and the quality of work that is being done so that you can have a higher yield. The yield now is like 50 hectares, 50 tons cane per hectare, which it was supposed to be like 80 tons cane per hectare. That is what it was supposed to be. And the reason for that is because of the neglect of the agronomical practices and the crop husbandry work that they're supposed to do. They're not doing that anymore. I know for a fact that GAWU had this particular department, and here we're talking about cost and producing. They had this department where they used to look at something called biological control, where we had one person from England used to come in the country to check some of these kind of biological control systems that they put in place to have better yields. And over the years, this has not proven to be fruitful. You're not getting any result out of it. But yet, as of today, you're still having those kinds of practices still going on. And you're not getting anything out of it, as I said. But what is also happening, and let me take Claremont for example, is that there is a rat outbreak at Claremont. They stopped applying these rat baits in the field, and not only at Claremont, other estates as well. They start applying these rat baits in the field, and so now the rat come, destroying the canes, cutting the canes, so you cannot have a proper yield, you can get proper production, a better production. So these are some of the things that is happening.
Why have they been abandoning the practices?
Well, the union had asked them, give us the reasons why you're abandoning these practices, and they have not come up with anything proper. They've also cut the application of fertilizers some time ago by half, if you're applying, I'll give you a wrong number figure. If you're applying 10 pounds of fertilizers on 2 square rods, now they're applying 5 pounds of fertilizer on the 2 square rods. When you ask them why, they can't give you an answer. So these are some of the things that they have got short. At Skeldon, we went to the cultivation at Skeldon, and we see that the cane farmers are planting right next to Gaisuku. The same variety of cane, the same age, the same cycle, but the yields, there's a vast difference with the yields. The farmers have a better yield. Gaisuku have a far less yield. Why is it so?
In a sense, they could address some of these.
Exactly.
But they haven't.
And it is the same workers working in both areas. It's not anybody from the outside. So here it is, going back to the managerial aspect of it, to manage. This is exactly what is happening.
Aslam, if we can talk about Gaisuku's debt as we come to the end of this segment, what are the facts concerning the sugar companies?
Gaisuku has consistently said that they're indebted about $80 billion, and this has true been some a lot. But when you examine the numbers, Cameron referred to the whole year's day meeting we had with the government in Gaisuku. And from that data, which was at October last year, so the industry is indebted $80.2 billion. But like anything, the devil is in the details, they say. And when you examine it, $33 billion is related to an item called pension liability. That means if all the workers who receive pension, or who should receive pension to age 60 by some magical means tomorrow, the Gaisuku has to find this money. That's not fact. Will everyone reach age 60? That is left to be seen. There's a lot of turnover, a lot of anxiety in the industry. So the figure there is highly doubtful. 33 billion. Another big chunk of it, 30 billion thereabout, relates to this loans contracted for Skeldon, which is incidentally being served by the government, repaid by the government rather. Minister Jordan in his debt report he released last year confirmed that the government is servicing those debts. So between those two, you're talking about $63 billion, which are one served by the government and the realizability of the other is highly doubtful. That leaves you with 17 billion. Of that, 7.6 billion dollars GRA. Owed to GRA, you know. There's an argument that debt should be written off. You've seen GRA given other companies write-offs much larger than that. So, really and truly, you're left with a debt of 10 billion, less than 10 billion. So a company the size of Gaisuku, the vastness of Gaisuku, $10 billion, is not a big debt to manage and can be managed. And it doesn't matter, again, coming back to what the management of the debt management, if production increases, you have more resources to manage it. So it's not as a big hill or we're making a mountain out of a molehill, more or less.
What has eluded them then when it comes to addressing this? Because they would have had specialists on their side who would have advised them, that this is possible. What is
right? One has to be, because in the last three budgets, Gaisuku's gotten $32 billion. The debt hasn't come down by any big means, if you believe them, and the production is not where it is. So one has to ask, where is this money going? If it's not going to service debt, it is not going to increase production. Where is the money going? So
I just want to make a little point that in terms of your question, Aslam answered very correctly. But just to add that is one of the pictures that is painted to frighten people, to frighten the Guyanese people, to tell them that look, Gaisuku is in all this trouble. Gaisuku is highly indebted. And look, the quicker we could miniaturize Gaisuku, the quicker we could close estates, we could sell out what we could sell out, it is better. So you're painting a picture which is absolutely not true, which is not correct. And the fact that you're going to close so many estates, you don't have pension liability for them. So much thousands of workers. So even the number that they are putting out there is not an effective number. And then when you become when you reach pension age and you're receiving pension, sugar workers are not living long, many years. They take the average because they would have worked so hard, they would have gone through so many hardship in their life, and that has to do with your longevity when you work more than you ought to. So, I mean, that we need to put this in proper perspective. As the Congress said, the long-term debt should not be used as a factor. The pension liability should not be used as a factor to say about GAWU's debt being over $80 billion.
I know you, as a member of parliament, has tried to raise the closure of the estates and then the sugar industry as a whole as an urgent matter in the House, but that was not possible. What is happening at the level of the parliamentary committee to address some of these very concerns?
Well, you know, even the state paper hasn't yet been discussed.
Yeah.
Even that, an important document like that. Of course, for me, it's a non-paper. What is written there? They had another paper, they call it the white paper.
White paper. Mm-hmm.
Well, those of us who see it, that was a better document. It had some substance inside to talk and to deal with, but they watered it down. So they have an objective. Why they have now put a non-paper? And even they are not treating the Guyanese people, the sugar workers, the stakeholders in a decent way to have this paper discussed. So we are calling upon them to do that. The Economic Services Committee that is supposed to discuss the report of the Commission of Inquiry, this costly Commission of Inquiry, has not been able to do that so far. Although there is a commitment by the Minister of Agriculture when he spoke in December 2015, when he was introducing the paper in the Parliament. He just gave it, make a statement and say about the paper and imply that it will be discussed. It was never discussed. When the Parliamentary Committee, Economic Services Committee began to discuss the paper, it was halted, the discussions was halted. That it has not been approved by the National Assembly for the committee to discuss it. The committee met earlier this month, it has not been able to reach again. The reason is many ministers who are members of the committee are finding it difficult to attend meetings. So the committee is not meeting. So here, another important point, you have these committees that is supposed to overlook many issues of government policy, but they are unable to meet and discuss these matters.
Okay. We will continue to discuss some of the other issues affecting the sugar industry in other segments of this program.